Hey everyone, and welcome to another new episode of Time Extend. This week, it's me, Adam, we got Brendan, and I guess he liked us so much last time that he wanted to come back. It's Andrew Elmore.
Hi.
I mean, I guess we left like a good impression on you, because like, I don't know why you would want to come back to this little rinky-dink racing game show.
I can't be mean to the show. I love it. I love it so much.
Oh, that's great. Well, I mean, I think it was... Brendan wasn't here, Brendan, so you, I think if you were here, it probably would have seemed a little bit more, like, high quality, but it was pretty much just, like, me and Andrew just going in, like, a circular hole down this, like, vicious spiral of, like, jog cons and other things, and things I can't even remember. It was almost like a fever dream.
It's my favourite episode. Because I wasn't on it. I was too busy out getting drunk watching the Royal Rumble.
Amazing. That's honestly a better priority.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you would rather not listen to Time Extend and go watch wrestling, that's, like, totally understandable and okay.
Alright, force feedback. JogCon, let's talk about it.
Alright, well, maybe not so soon. I think if we had, like, 4 Ridge Racer episodes in a row, I think we'd lose all of our listeners.
Or double them. One of the two.
That's true. And we are actually going to start this off with a little bit of Ridge Racer talk. But it's not. I promise it's not actually about games. It's just about giveaways. So, yeah, so Andrew, you were on our last episode. You made the wonderful record Real Racing Roots 2019. Go listen to the last episode and the one before it, or the Ridge Racer ones if you want to hear about it, because... I mean, it's great, and you can go into way more detail listening to those shows than we will right here. But we have a copy of one of the limited, I believe there are only 20 physical releases of the album, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Something like that.
Yeah. We have one, and it's really hard for me to not, like, open it and, like, steal it and contain it as my own because it's so beautiful. But we thought, why not give it away to our wonderful listeners and the people who can put up with all this Ridge Racer stuff. So the way we're going to go about this is between when this podcast goes up and let's make it Friday, March 8th, because that will probably be right before the next episode. We want you to tweet at Time Extend, and our account is at Time_Extend. With your favorite Ridge Racer memory. It can be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be R4.
I like that.
Yeah, get some discussion going. So just add in the hashtag. Make sure you do this or else we won't be able to really find it. Add in the hashtag RR Memories. And then on the next show, we'll read our favorite memories or favorite entries on the air. And among all of them, we'll randomly pick one person to who entered to give the album to. So does that sound good?
It's fantastic. If you want to increase your chances of winning, spam Nintendo's Twitter account with "We want Ridge Racer 8." I'm kidding. That won't increase your chances, but maybe you should do that anyway.
Release Fandango.
Yeah,
just literally anybody. Just start demanding from people on the street.
Just Nintendo, Namco.
Just don't tell them that we told you to do it, or else it'll make us look even worse. I would maybe like to get hired in this industry one day, so you know. Just
be funny.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty. So we're gonna do a little bit of a backwards episode this time, because we have Andrew here for the first segment, and he played the game we're about to talk about without me even asking him to, without either of us asking him to, which is pretty amazing. But we're gonna start off with Sega Racing System, another round of that, and we're finally talking about Test Drive Le Mans. After God knows how long.
It's been a long road.
It has been a long road, Brendan. You had to track down a like almost not legit like pre-release reviewer copy to play it.
Yeah. I'm so excited about that.
Copy of Le Mans 24 Hours. Don't at me with jealousy, Adam.
Yeah, it's not even Test Drive Le Mans. It's Le Mans 24 Hours, which is a much better title. It's just what the game is, you know?
Quick side question. Is this another case of kind of like V-Rally where it came to the States and got Test Drive slapped onto it?
Yeah, but this is more of a case where I think at the time Infogrames had the Test Drive license, so they just decided, like, why not? It'll get more recognition in the States. So they went that way about it.
Right, I just meant it
We've
wasn't
talked-
initially conceived as a test drive spin-off.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably correct.
We've talked before about how infograms were not entirely consistent with their naming conventions across regions as well. One of the free practice episodes we talked about that, so it seems like when they were releasing a game in another region, they just thought, I'll let the intern name it, we'll see what we end up with.
How great would it be if that V-Rally 4 on Switch was just Need for Speed V-Rally again?
Oh yeah. Well, it's weird that V-Rally was both Need for Speed and Test Drive
I
at
know.
different times. It's just so strange. And then like
On
I
different platforms.
one time I tweeted something about it and somebody was like, it wasn't a real Need for Speed game. I'm like, I know it wasn't a real Need for Speed game, but like it was, like, to the people who played it in this country, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
I love the idea of getting really upset about that.
well, it's like, sorry, sorry companies that release games in the United States didn't trust the audience enough to like be able to play a game unless it had the words Test Drive or Need for Speed on it. But that's not really my fault. I'm over.
As you don't know games, Adam. You don't know them.
Yeah.
In a way, it is your fault.
Let's just cut the podcast right here because I don't know games. And,
Clearly, right.
oh man. All right. So, Test Drive Le Mans in North America, Le Mans 24 Hours elsewhere in the world. Developed by Infogrames Melbourne House, published by Infogrames. Infogrames is such a weird name for a company. Have you all heard the
Infogrames is entertainment.
Okay, you have heard it. Okay. For the people who haven't heard it, we're definitely putting it in this show.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a classic. NASCAR Heat, Tonka Town. Oh, well, you'll hear it later. You'll be able to hear it.
About once every 2 months, I just, out of nowhere, in the middle of doing something else, just will creep into my head. Alone in the dark, that's not all.
I hope the internet never forgets that.
I fear that large swaths of it already have, but if we keep that fire lit, the eternal torch of Infogrames.
We'll just do it every episode, like Bren reminds us that V-Rally exists, and maybe
Go.
maybe it'll work.
I was disappointed nobody mentioned V-Rally in the episode I wasn't in this podcast.
I felt really bad about that at the end, actually. I realized, like, God damn it, neither I nor Andrew mentioned V-Rally, and
Did you not talk about it as having JogCon support?
maybe you did?
Oh, maybe you did. I need to listen back now.
Yeah.
The first one has NejiCon support, and the second one has JogCon support, and I don't know if that actually got brought up or not as a way to shoehorn in V-Rally 4. Probably not.
NASCAR Heat, Tonka Town. Stuntman makes my hair spin round. Beachhead transfer, Freddy Five. Unreal Tournament, Test Drive. Survivor, Civilization. Superman saves the nation. NSYNC Hotline, Dragon Ball. Along in the dark, and that's not all. Rocks my world. Entertainment. Rocks my world. Infogrames. Infogrames is innovation. Power of imagination. Infogrames is entertainment that rocks my world. Infogrames is innovation. Power of imagination. Infogrames is entertainment that rocks my world.
So, Le Mans 24 Hour. Here's an interesting little aside because I like these little nuggets of info. When you start playing this game, it says like produced by Bruno Bonnell, who when I was a kid, I was playing this game. I know who the hell Bruno Bonnell is. Apparently, well, he started Infogrames, but he is now a representative on the French National Assembly. So he is a politician. The guy who helped make Test Drive Le Mans a real thing is a politician in France.
Wild. I'm going to choose to not look up anything about his politics and just assume that since he brought this joyous, wonderful gift of a game into the world, that he can do no wrong.
Yeah, in 2019, I think that's the best way to go about it. Melbourne House, also responsible for a couple other games. Another Dreamcast racer known as Looney Tunes Space Race, which I played when I was a kid, and it was...
That game is secretly good.
Yeah, it was okay. You know, it was fine. It was weird because I don't think, if I remember correctly, there was no music when you were actually playing it, like, in the gameplay. It would just be all these, like, really weird, like, kind of, like... just like stock sounds of like spacey sounds, like a laser and like you know, all these weird things you'd associate, and like Looney Tunes like explosions and stuff, and like no music, so that was kind of creepy. They also worked on the PS2 and PSP versions of Test Drive Unlimited, which I think I played like once and was like, wow, these are surprisingly like in depth for like PS2, for a PS2 version of like a PS3 game, but it was still kind of like a PS2 game trying to be a PS3 game, so it's not something that anyone should really play. It was just there if you didn't have a PS3.
The PSP one would be more recommended then, would you say?
I guess so, because, well, I think you could play that game online or something like that. It was really weird.
Wow.
But Melbourne House was, they definitely had their moments of, their moments in the sun, and I think, you know, it's safe to say none of them were brighter than Test Drive Le Mans. They don't really exist anymore. I mean, I don't know what they've done since, but they fell into Infogrames, became Atari, and then they may have sold off the studio and had them do something else or something like that. So they're not really an entity anymore. But the interesting thing about Test Drive Le Mans is that this game actually... So when you talk about Test Drive Le Mans, you're kind of talking about two games, because the one we're talking about is a Dreamcast release that came out in November of 2000. Earlier in 2000, there was a PS1 version and the PC version that were made by Brendan's favorite developer, Eutechnyx. And
Wow, shots fired.
yeah, and that game was nothing at all like the one that we're talking about today. It was made by a completely different developer, and from what I understand, Melbourne House wanted to port that game to Dreamcast, but I guess they decided it was crap, because everything I read about is that it wasn't very good, so they just decided to basically make an entirely new game. So that one came out on Dreamcast at the end of 2000, and then it was released again on the PS2 in summer of 01, which would have been like right after the Dreamcast sort of died.
All too familiar tale.
Yeah, or maybe not right after. Yeah, I guess more like in the midst of the Dreamcast dying. So they ported it to the PS2, they added some content, which we'll talk about later, and then they re-released it on the PC in summer of 2002 as the new version that was based on the original Dreamcast game, as opposed to the earlier PC release, which was based on the PS1 game. So this game has a really weird history that nobody would ever bother to tell you except us.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I was just going to say, the PlayStation 1 version of the game, I think I might have played it because the intro video used Bohemian Like You, I'm sure, as its theme song. In 90s song. I'll need to try and find that. But sorry, Andrew, continue. I'm sorry I interrupted our guest.
No, you're good. There's a weird like stream delay. I was just going to ask if they even changed the name on the PC release, because I don't think so, right?
I think
just like different box art or something.
the PC release might just be Le Mans 24. So when it made it to PS2, it just became Le Mans 24 Hours or 24 Hours, something like that. It doesn't have Test Drive branding, but that was probably true of the PC, the 2002 PC release as well. But what I think is interesting is that the PS2 one, they did change some things, and I wonder if the PC one's even more updated than that, because the whole idea of this game is that it's based on like the 99 and 2000 years of the race, for the Dreamcast one anyway, and then with the PS2 they updated it so it had 2001 cars and teams and even like an extra track. So if they did that for a PC, that'd be cool as well. This game, honestly, like, it's not short on content. It's actually, I don't know the exact number of cars, but it's got a lot, and it doesn't have a ton of tracks, but they do replicate the entirety of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Like, there's day-night change, there's weather, you can do the race in the full 24 hours, you can do it in, I think, 6 hours or 3 or 24 minutes, which is the way I like to do it because I'm a baby. And 24 cars on track that you can race against, which is like unbelievable for the time. I mean, this is back in 2000. So, I mean, I like right out of the gate when I played this game, I was a little kid when I played it first, and I remember getting it for Christmas, and I was like, I don't know what Le Mans is. Like, I'm like, Test Drive Le Mans? I could read pretty well as a kid. Lemons, yeah. And then my brother's like, oh no, it got good reviews, you'll like it. And I was like, okay. But he didn't, I'm the only person who likes motorsports in my family, so I didn't really understand where it was coming from. And I don't think I really liked the game that much when I was a kid, because it's a very serious game. But like over the years, I'd revisit it, and I just every single time I'd be more and more impressed with what they manage. Because, as I've alluded to in the past, I think it's my favorite Dreamcast racer, which is a pretty is a pretty like huge accomplishment. Because I think every aspect of this game, like, it was a simulator for the time, and it still handles really well. Like, not perfectly, but definitely way better than anything else, save for Gran Turismo, of the day. And it also looks great, and it plays really well, and the soundtrack is fantastic. Like, across the board, it's like top-notch production values, and apparently it was only $30 when it came out in the United States, which is pretty incredible, too.
It's definitely a positive if it was a bit cheaper. I mean, as someone who hasn't played it prior to preparing for this podcast, I think I described it to you, Adam, when we were talking on Facebook, as it's almost kind of like Grid before Grid actually happened. That's what the handling really reminds me of. I'm not sure
Oh, that's a good point.
what it is exactly. Yeah, it just has that same kind of weighty feel, but you can still push the back of the cars out, and the grass and the sand traps are really brutal, much like Grid as well. It really reminds me of. It does really feel like Grid to me, and I don't know if I'm crazy for thinking that.
I feel like it might break a little bit easier. I feel like I have an easier time getting into corners than in Grid, but I might just have not spent enough time with Grid to get good, as the kids say.
I always had this issue with Grid where it just kind of felt very floaty, and I felt like I could really just like thrash it into corners, especially when you're like at that game's, the first game's version of Le Mans, which is like 80 car lengths wide, and like it's just the scale of it's ridiculous. But this game feels oddly like more realistic to me. It's still, it's Simcade, which we hate saying, but it's still kind of like that, but like it's more grounded, and it's like it's pretty challenging too, because like you do definitely get in situations where you have like snap oversteer, especially on like some of the more challenging tracks. Like this game has Donington, and I was doing like one of the longer races there, and like it was just like a GT2 car. I was driving like a 911, and it started to rain, and there was like no saving it. Like across, I don't know the names of the corners at Donington, but they're the first like series of S's essentially you go through in that track. They're all just like bounding over the hills and stuff, and I'm just like losing it every single time. So it quite challenging, but then I think if you work at it, you tiptoe through it, you can be pretty competitive, which reminds me of like a modern racing game. You know, it's like it doesn't feel so unfair that you just want to give up, that like, oh, this is just like bullshit. But it's just challenging enough to, you can still kind of be grounded and kind of think like, oh, if I go about this way, if I'm a little bit more careful, I can make it work, and it inspires you to keep coming back, which is like a quality that I appreciate in the best simulators, I think.
It's really funny that you mentioned that about Donington, because I had the exact opposite problem. When I was running through a championship series for the first time, that was the first track where I was like, I don't need to worry about doing a qualifier lap. I'll just dive in. Which, don't do that. That was not smart. But no, it's got that big long straightaway on one side of the course, and I did not pay enough attention to the mini map. But just out of the corner of my eye, I was like, "Yep, straightaway, got it. I'm just gonna floor it for a while." And all of a sudden, the car in front of me, halfway down the straightaway, slams on the brakes and starts moving, and I didn't see that little slight curve around to the right where the track gives way to mud. And there's that hard.
Yep.
Uh-huh. I got some air on that wall. Should have been dead, but something damage models. That's another thing that's kind of a bummer reading old reviews of the time of this game when everyone was very obsessive about every racing game needing to have realistic like damage models for all their cars and everything.
We moaned about that before, I believe.
Yes.
When we were talking. Well, to be honest, that is like a 6-year stretch of reviewers constantly complaining about the lack of damage modelling. Like, I think even Sega Rally Revo got it, and that was like 8 years after this game. But honestly,
I feel
like
we're still talk about that up through like GT5.
yeah, it kind of died off after GT5, weirdly enough. I guess that's when people started to realise that as the graphics got better, the amount of effort required,
Yep.
it just wasn't worth having like a tiny bit of your bumper fall off. And I guess that's opened up the market to things like Wreckfest if you really want that type of thing.
Yeah, this is like the common drum that I feel like we beat over and over again on this show because of the way that we cover this time frame of like late 90s, early 2000s, and it was just like such a common refrain every single review, whether or not a game had damage or if it had damage but not in the way that somebody wanted. It's just like, there was this weird obsession with it, and now it's like most games have it, but a lot of games really don't try that hard, and everyone's cool with it. Like, it doesn't matter. And I don't know why we couldn't have gotten there 20 years earlier.
I mean, that's the deep dark secret, is that it never mattered.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like maybe if you're into the mechanical like simulation aspect of like, okay, I did something bad and now my alignment's off and the car's going to start pulling to one side or something, or if you want to start talking about like tire wear and brake wear and stuff during something like a 24-hour Le Mans race, but it's just things like, oh, the windshield shattered, my bumper fell off, I exploded. It's like, man, there's destruction derby over there, you can just pop that in, have yourself a time.
I think Burnout's success contributed a lot to that as well. Obviously not
that's a
for
good
this
point.
game particularly, but when people started saying, hey, if Burnout can have this amount of damage, why doesn't Gran Turismo?
Right, they're the
Seriously.
exact same game.
Exactly, there's no difference whatsoever.
The exact same game with the exact same like considerations and gameplay design and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, clearly. Nitrous and driving onto oncoming traffic is one of my favorite parts of GT3.
There is nitrous
yeah.
in GT, or is it GT4 has nitrous? Right?
T4, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It would like give you, I remember always being disappointed by the nitrous in whichever one it was, I guess GT4, because like you press the
Nothing
stick.
fucking happened.
Well, nothing happens. Like you go faster, but it's just like the way nitrous works in real life. It's like you get a boost of horsepower. Flames don't shoot out your exhaust pipes or anything like that. You know?
It's like widen the camera lens and everything.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden you're on drugs. Yeah, it's not like that.
It
Amazing.
doesn't take you into like a giant like CG hyperspace thing like the first Fast and Furious.
Yeah, it's so disappointing.
Yeah, hitting 110 miles per hour and
Yeah.
a Supra, you're like, oh,
Bending
fuck.
time and light. You just start getting those like Akira tail lights.
Akira taillights.
A quick note that I had about Test Drive Le Mans, though, is the way that it handles difficulty is really interesting to me, at least for its time.
Yeah, I was gonna point this out as well. I actually kind of dislike it, but go ahead.
I think I might know why, but I'll let you speak for yourself. So I jumped in with just the intermediate, and that's kind of the space that I've been playing this game in, because I'm always afraid that with like non-super arcadey racers, that if I bump it up to the highest difficulty, it's going to be like ultra hardcore. And I don't know if that would actually be the case here. I haven't tested that, but like I've been winning too much in intermediate, so I should probably bump it up, kind of thing. Because like to be clear, I'm going to be spending a lot of time with this game in the future, regardless of this podcast or not. Because like Brent, I also picked it up for this show, and also because Adam kept bringing it up, and I was like, all right, okay, I'll give it a shot, and I'm extremely glad that I did. We'll get into that later. But anyway, difficulty. I looked at the kind of like adaptive settings that it has for the entry level, and I wanted to see what that was like, because I feel like, at least in personal experience, it wasn't really till the first and second Forza Motorsport that I started to feel like the driving assistance was doing a good job at lowering the barrier for people that were not like playing a lot of more kind of sim-y racing games.
Yeah.
And this definitely is more in that casual sim space where it is far from iRacing, but it's also far from like Wipeout.
Yeah.
But no, so I took, I just out of curiosity, after spending some time with it on intermediate, I bumped it down to the beginner with all the assistants on, and just took the fastest car I could around the main Le Mans track. And I actually thought that the way it handled auto braking was a lot more intuitive than I would have expected. It still definitely gets in the way of, like, you know, higher level, like if you want to accelerate out of a turn harder because of the space that the car next to you is in relation to where you are on the track or whatever. But generally, I thought that it actually handled that stuff really well. But I'm curious to. I feel like Adam's chomping at the bit to tear me down.
No, I think
Bring it on.
the auto braking, like, I have no problem with that, and I appreciate that they were trying to simplify things, because my main issue with the difficulty is that it's cut into beginner, intermediate, and expert. And
It's true. I do wish you had some granularity over that stuff.
yeah, so like that, every difficulty setting pairs some aspect of auto braking with some aspect of driving aids, which is basically like traction control. So it's like beginner is auto braking's on, traction control obviously is on, and then the level of your opponent is at the lowest. You know, it's the easiest opponents you can face in terms of the AI. When you go up, which is great when, you know, when I was really little and I was playing this game, that's pretty much how I would always play the game. When you go up to intermediate, it turns auto braking off, but it leaves traction control on, and it bumps up the difficulty of the opponent. And then when you go up to expert, it turns everything off and makes the opponents as hard as they can be. Now, when you're in expert mode, well, my first issue is that it's pairing traction control with like levels of the opposition, which I don't like, because what if I want to turn TCS off and then also play against like intermediate opponents? I can't do that. But the other issue is that, and this gets into my one huge gripe with the game, although this is more of a granular thing, but like it kind of ties into a story. So like, I was finding that in typical race situations, and I was doing like, I think this was like the GT Enduro series, which is like you're doing like 10 or 12 lap races or something like that. Or they might all be like 15 minutes in length or something. And there's always a pit stop. You don't have to pit, but you usually have to pit in these races. And I was at Donington, and I was doing it on expert difficulty, and this whole race was in the dry. And it was a good challenge, and it was fun, and expert was where I wanted to be, and I liked that I got to have traction control off, and it was great. The next race I did in the series was at Catalunya, where it rained. Now,
Ooh.
when it
There's some tight
rains,
turns in there.
yeah, when it rains in this game, you really need to, speaking to, you know, the aspect of how it was kind of a sim ahead of its time, you really need to pit and put on some wet tires. Like, it's important, because slicks don't do a good job in the wet in this game, as they shouldn't. But the problem is,
It's like driving on ice.
yeah, the problem is nobody else has to pit, and that is.
Oh no.
And that's a problem that I have had with so many racing games over the years, whether it's something this old or even the first Project Cars, is like, yeah, why is it that when it rains, I lose 5 seconds a lap, but nobody else does? It's just...
That's how real racing works, Adam.
Yeah, it's so... It's so unfair, and like, I'm willing to, you know, this game's old, and like, they were already, by doing the dynamic weather thing, by doing all stuff, like, they were already like attacking at a level that nobody else was, and I appreciate that. But like, when a game pulls that crap today, as Project Cars did, or as F1 did, I think when Codemasters started making the F1 games, I have no patience for that shit. I'm like, you want me to do a whole season of this, but like, the fact that these drivers won't slow down when like the weather forces them to, or they won't pit, or they won't do anything, they'll basically stick to whatever schedule that they started with. Like, you can't have a rewarding, like, invigorating competitive experience that way. So oh, and the other thing is, like, some cars just like won't pit at all, like, regardless of race conditions. Like, in some of the races I was doing in that GT Enduro series, the top 5 didn't. Everyone else did, but the top 5 didn't have to.
Weird. Weird.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
infuriating.
it's really, really infuriating. So then what you have to do as a result of that, and this is how it ties back into the difficulty thing, is I had to turn the difficulty down. to intermediate. So, because there's no way, like, you don't really know the forecast before you get into the race.
Yeah.
Right. So the only thing you can do is just make the game as easy as possible for yourself. So that's kind of where it all falls apart for me.
It's an experience.
Yeah, I'm sorry it was such a long-winded story, but just like as I was going through it, I must have sunk like 2 hours into this game one day, like more time than I expected to for this show, which is probably better for the episode. But like, I wasted a lot of time that day. I could have been doing other more productive things in my life. Instead, I had to keep rerunning the GT Enduro series over and over again because the game was unfair.
I hate when games do that type of thing because it's just artificial difficulty, and I know that's like one of the most redundant phrases considering it's all artificial. But like, let's be honest, if it isn't an even playing field, then you shouldn't have to change the difficulty to kind of make up for that, because then you won't get the satisfaction either of finally winning that series. And it can be forgiven, like you said, because this is a Dreamcast game we're talking about, but in recent times you still see it occasionally. Although it's funny you mentioned Codemasters, because I think it was like Formula 1 2013 or 2014 where
Yep.
I had the opposite effect of it started absolutely bucking it down, and then the Spanish Grand Prix with rain tyres on, but the rest of the field just kept driving at like 40 miles per hour.
Oh my
And
god,
I was having
that's
a
hilarious.
terrible fucking race, really bad. And I was just whizzing by everybody, like, see you later, Lewis, catch you later, Sebastian. Just like blasting through the field and ended up winning the race from dead last with like 10 laps left.
I love that you also had that experience at Catalunya. Maybe it's just Catalunya.
Maybe. That's actually pretty weird. There's something in there.
The great thing about Catalunya in this game is it doesn't have that terrible last sector, like final corner chicane that they put in like years later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, which is good. But
It might actually be my favorite course in this game when, road conditions are good and dry.
yeah,
I really enjoy that track.
yeah,
That's
it's a
nice.
pretty standard, solid track that I like to see in every game. And just to go through the tracks, like I said, there aren't that many of them. But you get Circuit de la Sarthe.
Quantity. It's quality over quantity.
Right. Circuit de la Sarthe, Bugatti, which is a short version of that, which you only ever see in either MotoGP games because MotoGP runs there, or Forza 3 and 4 had it. Forza now might have it too. I haven't played a Forza game in years. They probably have it now.
I was going to say, I thought I recognized it from 3.
Yeah. So it's in those games, and then you have Suzuka, which is maybe like my favorite track in the world. One of them anyway. Brno, which is really weird.
I like Brno.
Brno's good, but it's just weird. That's another motorcycle track. Like, why are so many motorcycle tracks in this game?
Project Cars as well. That
But I like it.
Yeah, Brno's got like the same corner 5 times, but it's a good corner, so I don't really mind.
It's a good way of summing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, driving that track is like listening to Weezer's Blue Album. Like, this is doing the same thing over and over, but it's damn good at it. I can't be mad.
Weezer references 2
crap,
weeks
we
in a
brought up
row.
Weezer twice in a row.
Weezer's the new V Rally.
No!
UV
I will
rally.
not stand for this.
I don't know if that's like the worst criticism in the world or a compliment.
I think at this point, that's just mean to V-Rally.
Yeah, oof, I think you're right. And the last track is Donington. Sad thing to admit about myself that will get me judged. I hate Donington with a burning passion. It's just so unfair. It's like, it's so unfair. Like, every other corner is just like, what if everything was blind? Like, what if you just couldn't see shit? It's not right. It's more the unfair difficulty. Actually, that's not at all what you meant, but that's what I think it means.
Stevie Wonder said it was his favourite racetrack ever.
What's my favorite racetrack ever? What?
Stevie Wonder said it was his favourite racetrack
Oh no, blind people jokes. We're getting dark. All right.
Really, really punching up on that one, huh?
Yeah. Well, to his credit, I'm sure he's way better at it than I am, because I just suck at Donington regardless. Also, the national circuit is stupid, as you alluded to, Andrew, because it's just got the worst final corner ever. Well, actually, both the national circuit and the regular one. The regular one's worse in other ways, because it's just like they basically append like a... Yeah, you know what? They append the penis to the end of the track. I mean, they basically do that with the Grand Prix circuit. But Yeah, I don't like Dyington. But anyway,
Ooh.
sorry.
Off the podcast.
It's like the hallowed home of one of the hallowed homes. You have too many hallowed homes of British racing.
Yeah, it's pretty much every track that isn't an absolute cesspit.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not qualified to speak, but I can just have strong opinions, like everyone on the internet, when they don't know about things.
Yeah.
Let's get positive. We talked about how good this game feels.
It feels great. It's a great game. I put in the notes real quick that, like, as I was doing research about the game, I found an issue of Edge magazine that discusses this and WRC on the PS1 and Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero and Daytona 2001. It's like the time extend
And
of
Metropolis Street Racer.
and Metropolis Street Racer, right? It's like the time extend of Edge issues, and I mean, it says a lot. This is like kind of my favorite game on the list. It feels really great. You want to expand upon that, Andrew? Because it seemed like you were going somewhere with it.
Sure, it's all right. I'm having trouble. I've been thinking about this a lot since about 3 minutes after I first started playing this game back in, I guess, December. I don't know how to talk about the kinesthetics of this game without sounding hyperbolic.
Well, I
I
mean,
like
every
it.
writer does that. So, like, go ahead.
Okay, fair. This is why I don't write. No one trusts me to, and I don't blame them. But no, again, with it being kind of in that weird casual sim space, which just feel like I'm throwing out weird buzzwords now instead of actual whatever. It's a helpful descriptor in its own right, even if it's dumb like Metroidvania. So, no, I don't know. It's just it strikes this weird balance that I feel like I've been looking for in this type of racing game for like my entire life in a weird way. Like, this is what I wanted every PGR to feel like. This is in a weird way. Like, I'm trying to think of other prominent examples of kind of games that play in that line. At least like with the weird Dreamcast analog stick and everything, like I still feel like this is the first time that, at least for me personally, I've played an older racing game of this fashion, of this style, and the like brakes have reacted exactly as I expected to on every car from get-go. It steers exactly as hard when I crank the analog stick all the way to one side or the other as I expect it to. It accelerates with this exact like speed curve that I would expect it to, and I don't know why, but all of it just comes together, at least for me personally, into just feeling impossibly good. And this has replaced everything else as my go-to. Like, I want to play a game where I drive a car around a track real fast for a little bit. I'm just going to turn something on and go. This has replaced all of them since like right after Thanksgiving, I guess.
Wow.
Since around November. So for the past few months, I've just like anytime I want to drive a car around real fast and have a lot of fun with it, I have just been popping in Test Drive Le Mans, and I want to scream like I'm on a roller coaster during every second of driving these cars around. And I don't like, I'm still trying to reckon with that and like put the pieces together in my own brain of how and why that is, because I feel like there should be a better way to speak to that more intelligently, other than just saying the words kinesthetics and game feel over and over.
Yeah, it's another buzzword, but I understand what you're saying. It feels really responsive. Like, it's like everything is kind of, you're in a race car. Granted, these are race cars that are like 20 years old, but like there's a certain level of responsiveness that you expect from that, and this game delivers on that. And there's also lots of like visual cues that really like kind of help, not just help the immersion, but almost help you drive better. Like, there's so much smoke that pours off of your tires when you lock your brakes up, and it's like really satisfying. And just even like the pops
Even in
and
cockpit view.
yeah, even in the cockpit view, which is weird, but but yeah, and there's so much like just like pops from the exhaust and the brake discs getting all red and everything, and it's like some of that kind of helps you drive better, like the tire squeal and the smoke from the brakes, but the rest of it just like, it just builds the feeling that like, okay, this is endurance racing. These are the visual motifs and things I expect from endurance racing, and it just it ties into the physicality of the game really well, and it's just so well produced. Like just every aspect of it is just so top notch. Like it looks so good. I love like the texture work. I'm sorry I'm getting away from like the physics and stuff, but like
It's an easy game to wax poetic about. I don't blame you.
yeah, I love like the way the textures look. It's like it's one of those 3D games I like to point to when we were talking about R4 last episode, because we talk about R4 like every episode now. It's one of those old 3D games I like to point to where it's just like, no, this is how like the 32, 64, 128-bit, whatever. This is how like this game puts on a masterclass in how you can make low poly stuff look really good, and yet at the same time like realistic and like kind of evoking a realistic feel, and just the textures and the color palette. It's like all these like warm but sort of like rustic greens and tans, but then you also get like the sun like really bright on the track sometimes, and like the bloom lighting from the street lamps, and it's very picturesque. And I think Le Mans, I feel like, is one of the most picturesque things to behold in the world. I've never been there, but I always kind of looked at it that way, and it fits really, really well.
It also highlights how bad like Sega Rally 2, for example, looks by comparison. Like another great Dreamcast racer, because Le Mans just like blows it out of the water in terms of the kind of the lighting and the atmospheric just feel of the game is a lot better than one of Sega's own like, prime franchises.
It also helps that the frame rate is consistent.
God, yeah.
Whereas Sega Rally 2 is maybe a little
Yeah,
it moves around, let's say.
Yeah, I mean the frame rate in this game does kind of fall apart at times, but it's not as frequent as Sega Rally. Like Sega Rally, it'll happen and you'll have no idea why. It's like what? Like I'm the only car on the screen. Why is everything now like 15 frames per second? Whereas like this, it's like, okay, it started raining, you know, there's a lot of cars in this corner. Like I understand it. It's more excusable. And of course it is running on the Dreamcast, so.
Yeah, and it never dipped into anything that I felt like affected gameplay, whereas Sega Rally 2 will drop down into N64 territory and make the car sick. And I'm not like a frame rate guy at all, but when it's bad, it's bad.
There's some real bottlenecks in Sega Rally 2, I think, in the Dreamcast, because like there's one particular corner on that first track that always gets the frame rate. It's like the second to last turn.
Yep.
Like a kind of hairpin left. You'll know exactly. Yeah. And every time you get that kind of, oh, you're going slow speed up effect every single time you go around it. It's really weird.
Yeah, those frame skips are honestly like you play the game so much that you expect it, and like going from the Dreamcast release of SR2 to being able to play the arcade one on emulator, I was like worse because I tried to give myself room like instinctively going into that corner that wasn't there because the arcade version was like locked 60 frames. I'm like, oh, now I have to get good. Okay.
This is how the game is supposed to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just such a beautiful title all around. Test Drive, and like, can we give some love to the soundtrack, because
it's impossibly good.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm very excited. I hit my face on the microphone.
No, it is impossibly good. What's weird about it is that there are actually like two soundtracks in this game. The rock one I have never heard, and I mean I heard it for like 2 seconds and decided this sucks, and I listened to the techno one, or they call it techno. It's not techno, but it's way better. It's great. It's formed like my mental soundtrack to Le Mans for the rest of my life. Like every single time I watch the race every year, like the title song, the main menu song, like that's what I hear. Like these are the songs that play in my head that like symbolize like kind of that sexiness of like endurance racing. Like, oh, it's so grueling and like long-winded, but also beautiful, and just like the drama and everything. I don't know, it just captures it really, really well.
hear racing jazz.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I desperately want to buy a soundtrack for this if it exists, which I sincerely doubt.
I don't think
I'm sure
it
someone
exists.
has to have ripped it somewhere, but it's one of those soundtracks that makes me mad. It's so good. It's like creatively frustrating. It's just like so inspiring that it's just upsetting.
That is great. It's really fantastic.
Well, I was able to grab the soundtrack. I mean, it's gonna be in the episode, but I don't know of a physical release. But what I think is kind of weird is that like none of the songs have names, from what I can gather, which is really sad when that happens because it's like this is too good a soundtrack to not like feel like the real
file
thing.
names that were on the disc that someone pulled on a rip.
It's just song 1, song 2, or track 1, track 2. I actually came.
Oh, it's got that Blur song in there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I came up. I had to name the songs my own names, and they're just like these like stupidly cliched like downforce, slipstream,
I know all about
lens
that.
flare. Yeah, exactly. It's so dumb. And I was like. And I was like, oh, I have to order this the way, like, what if it was ordered, like, the progression of the race? I'm such a nerd. It's so dumb.
I think this is the perfect place for that.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm really curious. I want to pick up the PS2 copy of this at some point and see how that feels in comparison.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because the PS2 game, so yeah, it came out, like, almost a year later, and it feels the same. But like a lot of early PS2 games that make me really happy as a Sega fan, F355 Challenge and Crazy Taxi are among them. It doesn't run quite as well because they hadn't quite figured out. You know, the PS2 was more powerful than the Dreamcast, but like early in the system's life, they hadn't really gotten there yet. So it doesn't. If you're expecting like, oh, what if this game looked like GT3? It doesn't. It's like the cars have some more polygons, but like the atmospheric effects aren't as good, and everything's got that kind of like really sort of like grainy, flickery PS2 early gen look that like Ridge Racer 5 had, but like Ridge Racer 5 was able to kind of work with it, and this game kind of doesn't. And the load times are so long. They're obscenely long.
They're super snappy in the Dreamcast version.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Yeah, I feel like the aliasing that everyone complained about on Ridge Racer 5 actually like works in a weird way. And all of the I've looked up a lot of footage of the PS2 port of Le Mans, and it seems like this might just be people's like capturing hardware and weird emulator tweaks, but it seems like the like color palette is a little bit murkier. Everything's a little bit grainy. As a Dreamcast has that kind of like weird GameCube magic to it, where just everything just scales up really cleanly. It looks really sharp and
Great
vibrant in a weird
comparison.
way.
Yeah.
It's got that like I have a feeling that if somehow in some magical world where good things happened, Le Mans got like, you know, remastered for modern consoles and everything, it would have that same kind of like Resident Evil 4 thing. Where it's just like, they didn't redo the art, it's just rendered at a higher res, and it just holds up extremely well. Just something about the look of this game on Dreamcast is just really clean. I don't know how else to describe it.
The point
Over
about the point about the Dreamcast color palette is, I feel like, a very astute one, because like I always have this issue with PS2 games where they always look so dull for some reason. It's just like a problem with that system. Like almost every game I play. Like, I was revisiting the first WRC Tale by Evolution, and I'm like, why is this so... It puts me to sleep. Like, everything is so brown. But I never had that issue... I never had that issue on the Dreamcast. I never had that issue on the Xbox or the GameCube, so... Yeah, it always kind of struck me as odd.
Yeah, I mean, some of it just comes down to, like, art direction. And, you know, styles that change. It's not like, you know, the early 360 PS3 days where everything was brown and almost monochromatic, just because that was... what was in at the time, regrettably.
Yeah.
But there's something like, I don't know, we should see if we can like harangue John Linneman on here at some point to talk about the video output of the PS2 and why that is, because I feel like there are a select few people in the world that would know how to explain what we're talking about better than we do. But I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and it contributes to this feeling that, like, I mean, if you only had a PS2 to play Test Drive Le Mans 24 hours, It's fine. Like, it's still a good game, and you actually get more content, and you get, like, the extra content you get is great. So, like, you get a couple new cars from the race that would happen the next year, that after the Dreamcast release. But more importantly than that, you get Road Atlanta, which is a great track that's been in Forza a lot, and unfortunately not many other games. But what I really love is that they added Petit Le Mans, which started in 2001, I believe was the first year of Petit Le Mans. Petit Le Mans is a race that is run at Road Atlanta every year. They're still running it, I think. I haven't followed, like, United Sports Car Championship as closely as I should have in recent years. But
Shame on you.
yeah, I know. But
I've never followed it at all.
yeah, well, it's whatever. There was the American Le Mans series, and then that became USC. But then the USC was like doing this weird thing where they were also like the Rolex the Rolex Grand Am series. It's a long story, but the point is that Petit Le Mans is I really appreciate that's in this game, because Road Atlanta it's a very simple track, but it's very old school. It's a lot of fun, and I think that is the reason why every now and then I might want to revisit the PlayStation version, but that's very sparing. Like, that would be the only reason really why I'd want to do it.
That's good to know. I might actually check that out as well. Just extra tracks and cars in general, you kind of already had me sold. Brendan, I know you had a really interesting saga trying to acquire this game. You want to talk about that at all?
Oh man, yeah. So basically, for whatever reason in Europe, the price of this game is really expensive by comparison to other Dreamcast games. Like, it's not expensive compared to some old games, but by comparison to the fact, like, I managed to pick up Sega Rally 2 for about £7 here, which is decent. But like, to get a copy of Le Mans, the full retail version, it would have cost me around like 6 times that, basically. It's just really rare and expensive here, surprisingly, given that it's based off of a European series and everything. So you'd imagine that it was either mass produced to the point of oversaturation, or just loads of people reselling it. But nope, it's pretty rare and therefore very expensive. So that I could pick up that promo copy we mentioned earlier, I managed to get that for like, I think it was about £15. So I saved about £17 off of what the regular eBay going price was, so not too bad. But yeah, it's interesting how I'm assuming that means with Dreamcast owners in Europe, but it must have some form of cult following if resellers think they can get that amount of money for it.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to, like, is it just something that's more in demand because racing is bigger in Europe in general? Like, are there just more people that are more into this game? Did they actually print less copies over there? Because that seems counterintuitive.
Same as Daytona 2001 on the Dreamcast. That is very expensive too, and if Adam's comments are anything to go on, I'm not missing much by
Yeah, no, you're good.
played that one.
You're good.
Yeah, I actually can't wait to talk about that game. It's so weird. Like, it's so... And
it's fascinating.
And I will draw upon, when we do talk about it, we'll draw upon the article that is immediately before this one in the Edge magazine that I have a scan of, thanks to some person on the internet that talks about it.
Blessed soul.
Yeah, some blessed soul for updating. Thank you so much for doing that. Oh my god. Yeah, Daytona's a weird story, but as far as Test Drive's concerned, yeah, I'm happy I have a copy of this. I don't know how much the US ones are going for. I mean, you were able to get one, Andrew, so...
It's like $3.
Yeah, there you go.
Show off.
You could have, I mean, you could have just done that. Your system probably would have been able to play it, I would think.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
never actually thought about that. Is it region free, yeah, the Dreamcast?
Sort of.
Yes,
Right, okay, I get you. I
It's
get you.
really, you can stick with, first and second run Dreamcast. Like, you can stick a burned disc in there and it'll read it, but if you stick a Japanese disc in there, it's not going to read it. So, like, there are things you can do, but it's very strange and frustrating, especially if you're trying to deal with like refresh rates and PAL versus NTSC and like what kind of display you're plugging that thing into. I'm desperately trying to not just like go on a 6-hour tangent about like RGB SCART setups. I'll do it. Don't tempt me. I'll do it.
For about like the last 3 years of my life, I have been almost always sitting like on the Solaris Japan website with like a FrameMeister in my cart, but I've never gone for it. I've never pressed confirm. So one day, yeah, well, I mean, then I learned about the OSSC, but one day I will go down that dark road. But
Follow me down the path of cathode ray tubes, Adam.
oh my god, no, I don't think I
This
can do that.
giant head BVM on the floor next to me is calling you.
Yo, I live in Brooklyn now. I don't have room for that shit anymore.
Guess what, last week I don't either. I'm just an
Oh
idiot.
god. Oh my god, I barely have enough room for my... I had to like decide, because I moved, I had to decide like what do I want to have hooked up now, because I'm not able to have like a basement where I can keep all of my extra systems. So I'm rocking...
That's a secret. You just hook them all up all the time,
yeah,
all at once.
that's
forever.
like... That is impossible.
Run up that power bill. Start an electrical fire.
I've got a PS4, I've got the Dreamcast, of course, I've got my Switch, and then I have one of the first run PS3s that can do PS2 and PS1 games. That is still, thank God, working.
Yes, keep that alive as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're very lucky that that's still going.
It can play imports, which is sad, but oh well.
Yeah, Dreamcast thankfully is easy enough to just get a VGA set up that'll play very nicely with modern display. So you don't have to do anything ridiculous and get a nice, clean, crisp 480p out of that thing. Looks gorgeous.
I got the Akura HDMI kit from BBS over in Turkey.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Those guys are doing good work.
I've moved like twice with it. Like I've moved, apartments, and like every time I move with it, I'm so worried because it's like the only like kind of DIY thing I own, like that was made by somebody and not a big company. So like it's got like kind of the exposed circuit board and everything. So I'm like incredibly protective of it, like it's my baby. Like I put it in like this like steel case and I wrap it in like freaking cloth so it doesn't break, because I'm worried like if it breaks I'm screwed. Like
Yeah, it is. OSSC is the same way. It's built into that like project kit layers of like plastic basically, and all the sides are totally open. And like I have a 3-year-old, so I'm just terrified that something terrible is gonna happen to that thing someday.
oof, yeah.
Just go in there and like spray some canned air every so often just to keep it clean. Like I'm sure it's fine. I'm just being, over cautious. But
And it's like that plexiglass stuff, like it looks beautiful. It's just like you worry about how fragile it is.
it also just looks so janky.
Yeah. Beauty and jank side by side together in one package.
Tale as old as time.
Yep. So we have talked a lot about this game. This has been an hour of Sega Racing System.
I think we should just make it a Sega Racing System episode at this
I think
point.
this is the whole episode. Yeah, I think that's about where we are.
My journey into PC Master Racedom will have to wait.
Yeah, you're gonna regale us with tales of becoming a PC gamer and
Dirt Rally.
yeah, and Dirt Rally, but that'll be out by the time we have our next episode. So we haven't played it yet. So if you're looking for impressions, they ain't here yet.
I can give you impressions of the first game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like a 9-minute gif of my car just like barrel rolling 900s in midair while it's screaming around corners at 200 miles an hour, just exploding down the side of a mountain.
I deleted Dirt 4 off of my... You know what, Brendan, I blame you. I like Dirt 4, and then you talked me out of liking it.
Come on. How could I talk you out of liking it?
You talked me out of liking it, so I deleted it from my system. I installed Dirt Rally again. I'm like, damn it, this is actually really great. And
What's not to like about a very basic stage generator that uses the same 6 turns over and over again with 4 boring locations and a lacking presentation with poor replay control?
look, I was ignorant, but like I was happy in my ignorance. You should never take that away from someone. I mean, unless it's like, like their opinions are like horrible and like hateful. But like, if it's just that I like Dirt 4, just let me be, man.
I think I don't begrudge anybody for preferring Dirt 4. It's definitely it's a more complete package, but Dirt Rally's much more focused and reminiscent of the PlayStation 1 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, think everyone would agree. So, any final thoughts? All right.
Lamar?
Okay.
I was
I
talking
don't know where
about
to go at this point.
All right. This has been a great, fun, long episode of talking about Test Drive Le Mans. I should say real quick that I wrote a story around the time Le Mans happened last year about like the best games that did Le Mans, that tried to do Le Mans anyway on GT Planet. So you can go check that out. It still applies because like there hasn't been a new one that's come out since, so like it's just as relevant as when I wrote it. Otherwise, you can follow Time Extend at time_extend, and if you want in on that giveaway, we talked about at the beginning of the show, so go figure out how to do it there. We'll also tweet about it. Yeah, I'm Adam Ismail. I'm at Pioneer Spine on Twitter, and y'all can talk about yourselves.
Yeah, I'll go next then.
Yeah.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, yeah, it's at Ed Balls with 4 S's.
I already forgot how and why that happened.
It's in a previous episode. Go listen.
Yeah, go listen if you want to know.
Just go re-listen to all of them to figure out what bet you lost.
Oh, I haven't actually said what bet I've lost. I might keep that for the Patreon tier.
Nice.
Yes.
Good call.
I'm kidding, there's no Patreon. Don't worry, 12 listeners.
If we came out with a Patreon now, I think we'd be canceled forever. No one would ever take us seriously again. Nor should they.
For $50 a month would be a copy of Shocks delivered to your door every month.
But
limit.
limit only 10 people at that tier though, because like that's how many copies of Shocks still
that's
exist
all
in the world.
At some point we run out and I just start sending you PS2 copies of Rumble Racing.
I just start getting blank discs and writing Shocks on them.
They're not going to test it. They're not going to open it up. It's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. It's a
CDRs.
Yeah.
collector's
Just write
item.
preview build and Sharpie.
Piece of Shocks and Pepsi, man. There we go. That would solve the problem. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. That's about it just now. I'm not really writing at the moment. Andrew, you can go now.
I am at Andrew Elmore on Twitter. You can go listen to my stupid Ridge Racer album at anywhere. What's that thing called? Real Racing Roots 2019. There we go. I'm losing it. I'm getting punchy now.
If you have a hard time saying it, it makes me feel better that I kept calling it the wrong thing on the first show that we talked about it.
Because that's the the whole like the racing league, the Grand Prix, and everything in that game. Real Racing Roots 99, and I was putting it out 20 years later, but I couldn't call it Real Racing Roots 19 because that sounds weird. So I just made it 2019, and that's even dumber. And
Why not 2K19, man? 2K.
oh crap!
Time extend
Oh.
Real Racing Roots 2K19.
Produced by 2K Sports.
Speeds. I have to go take down the Spotify page.
Take Two Interactives. Real Racing Roots 2K19.
Just go all the way. Just call it 3K19 at some point.
Andrew, I feel like I feel like you should have gone first. It was very unhospitable of me as a host to plug myself before you. So, I'm sorry.
All good.
But you know what? If I could like
But you know what? Stuff it.
You know what? It
Turn around on
means
that. I love it.
it means that we consider you one of our own on Time Extend, and you are forever a member of this show. And I am just fucking stalling because I don't know what to say anymore. This has been such a ramshackle show.
It's like when you go to a friend's house often enough that you just start eating their food.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
letting yourself in. Like you don't ask anymore.
exactly. Yeah,
I was going to say as well, if you appear for a third episode, that means mandatorily we all have to be drunk. That's how it works. You can be a guest twice sober, and then the
That's
third
true,
time
that is-
everybody's got to be drunk. I'd say that's the Time Extend rule.
That's international law. I think that's actually in the Geneva Convention, oddly enough.
I think that works. I'm just really embarrassed to admit that I'm not drunk right now, and it probably sounds to everyone like I am. So
That's why I brought it up. It sounds like we're all like, really pissed or something because we've been talking absolute nonsense. But that's Monday podcasting for you.
Yes, absolutely. Is there, you guys, forgive me for breaking protocol here.
I don't care. There's no
I'm currently
protocol.
Is there a next SRS planned at sometime in the future to prepare for? Are there any other games I have to buy?
I would love to do Daytona, but Brendan can't afford it, so I don't know what we're gonna do next.
We can just regale him with tales of how awkward that game feels.
I'm going to check on eBay right now. We did this before with a game, and I absolutely crapped myself when I seen the price. So let's see what the current going rate is.
Well, you bought that copy on air, right?
Oh
Of Test
shit!
Drive.
There's a promo copy.
Yeah.
What?
Is there really?
Where there is.
Drop that into the chat. I need to see this.
Oh my god. How do you keep finding these? It has to be the same person,
20 pounds.
right?
Oh yeah, they one for Jet
Yeah.
Set Radio on here.
Yeah, it says you've bought from this seller before. Told me Lamont. I need to befriend this person. Suzanne84.
Go
If you're
find this
listening, give me that coffee.
All right. So this has been Time Extend. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry for everything. I really am. Not for you. Not for you guys. Definitely not for you guys, but for me. I'm sorry. I apologize. Goodbye.
I'm sorry. Derail this podcast.
Bye.
The only good thing that's creeping in steady. You almost can't think you bought this one of mine. Japanese comment is such a pity. Yeah, EM radio suits me fine. Main machine, main machine,
My daddy said, son, you're gonna drive and be drinking.
main machine.